Hello and welcome to another episode of Geared Toward Gear. My name is Sean and I'm so glad you're here. Today we are taking a look at the Steel Will Modus. I was excited to get this in my hand, and this actually came on loan to me from a subscriber named JD. So shout out to JD. Thank you so much for sending this knife as well as two others for me to take a look at and kind of carry and test and kind of give my thoughts on. And this is one that I had been wanting, kind of been on the list, and my list is always quite long, but it's been on the list, and so I'm really grateful to have had an opportunity to carry it. So before I get started, I'm kind of changing the way I'm going to do my reviews on knives in terms of kind of the order in which I talk about them, the size comparisons I'm going to standardize, and just my general flow is going to be standardized just to make it a little more clear to the viewer as to, okay, he's going to mention price at the beginning, he's going to talk about, texture and ergos towards the end, things like that, so that all of my videos related to knives will have the same basic flow. Having said that, I do have several that have already been filmed, and so depending on the order in which they post, you may not see that trend immediately, but before long you'll start seeing that trend. So, and this will be the first video doing it this way. So this is the Steel Will Modus. The model is the F25-13, and the -13 just references the color. It is a FRN handle, D2 blade steel flipper, and it costs $50. That's the retail cost. So that's the very short version, right? FRN D2 flipper for 50 bucks. The overall length on this guy is going to be 7.625 inches, and it's going to weigh in at 3.4 ounces. So let's get a couple size comparisons. First, I'm going to compare it to a couple other Steel Will models, and then I'm going to bring in what are going to be my new standard size comparison knives. It's 4 knives that I'll use on every video, but for this particular knife, I want to bring in a couple other Steel Wills first, in the event that you have those models. So the first would be the full-size cut jack. So there it is compared to the full-size cut jack. The cut jack is obviously a larger knife and longer overall, but you actually have the same amount of cutting edge because you have this finger choil on the cut jack. So there's the cut jack. Here's the Intrigue Mini. So pretty similar in overall length. Obviously this is a broader knife. This one's a lot more slender. And then lastly is the Mini cut jack. So there's a few Steel Will size comparisons for you. And then I'll bring in my new standard size comparisons for all knife reviews are going to be the following 4 knives. So 2 budget knives that I think everybody should own, and many do. And that is the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. And I'll typically line these up pivot to pivot to give you a general idea of what we're looking at there. So there's your Rat 1 and your Rat 2. And then my other 2 standard size comparison knives that are a little less budget friendly, I guess, will be the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. Again, pretty common models. And again, I will line those up pivot to pivot. So those are my 4 standard size comparisons moving forward. Rat 1 and Rat 2, Paramilitary 2, and the Mini Griptilian. So, as I mentioned, the overall length on this guy is 7.625 inches, 3.4 ounces, and very much has the feel and look of kind of the Steel Will budget line. The blade itself is going to be 3.25 inches in length, a satin finish drop point, kind of a sheep's footy drop point, depending on where you look. Some people call this a sheep's foot, others a drop point, but regardless, it's a really handsome blade shape. It does have a flat grind and a 0.12 inch stock thickness there. So that's what we're talking about as far as the blade is concerned. The handle is made from fiberglass reinforced nylon. It is textured, kind of in this almost like a rocky, stony kind of pattern. It's a little different than what you see on the cut jack, which is more of kind of like a herringbone pattern. And it is also different than what we see on the Intrigue, which is more of like a dog bone shaped pattern. So all similar, but just slightly different shape on the texturing there. It does have good traction. It's not crazy grippy, but for an EDC knife, it's plenty of traction as far as I'm concerned. The handle does come in a couple different colors. It comes in 2 different blue colors, and the only difference is the color of the backspacer. It comes in black, also with 2 different options for your backspacer color, and it comes in green. As far as the liners are concerned, we have nested stainless steel liners, and they are skeletonized. So if I can get in here, you can see the milling there on that side. There's nothing on the liner lock side, but it is milled out on the other side to reduce the weight a little bit. So that's what we're looking at as far as the handle. As far as action is concerned, this is a flipper. So no thumb studs, just a flipper, and it runs on bronze washers. It's quite smooth, similar to the Intrigue and the Cut Jack. So if you have any other steel wheels in this general sort of series, it's going to flip and feel pretty much the same. The detent, I think on this one could be a little stronger. I would say it's about a 6 out of 10, where I prefer like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. That's all personal taste. It's not a loose detent. It's not going to come out on you. I would just like it to be a little stronger, but it's certainly plenty fine for EDC. So no major issues with the detent. The lockup and kind of centering we'll talk on next. It is a liner lock, and as you can see, it's locking up probably, I mean, it's relatively early, probably 25-30%. And you do have some texturing on that liner lock. The lockup itself is pretty strong, no up and down play, a little bit of side to side, but I can deal with that. The centering on the blade is nice and center, so that's good to see as far as quality control is concerned. As far as texturing, we'll kind of move into, texturing, lanyards, construction, things like that. So it does have a backspacer, and the backspacer is aluminum, and it does have some texturing on it. It's orange in color, so kind of a cool contrast if you like the blue and orange combo there. There is jimping on the flipper tab itself, and it is functional. It's not crazy aggressive like grab your finger, but it definitely does provide some function to assist in the flipping action. So no problems with the flipper. It sticks out further than some would like. Others, like myself, don't particularly care, so that's all personal preference there. The thumb ramp is also going to be jimped, and the jimping is really good, actually. I like Steel Will's jimping. I think they do a really good job, and kind of what I consider perfect jimping isn't necessarily a specific style or pattern. What I prefer personally is that if I want to ignore it and move past it, I can just rub my thumb right past it. But if I want it to be functional and I push in with my thumb, it locks. And as I rock my thumb back and forth, my thumb's not going anywhere. So for me, that's kind of perfect jimping, in that I can't ignore it if I want to, but when I want it to be functional, it is functional. So good job on the jimping. As I mentioned, there is some texturing on the liner lock itself, which is moderately functional, makes it nice and easy to get in there and disengage that liner lock and easily close it up one-handed. So as far as all the texturing is concerned, I don't really have any issue. There's a lot of texture going on, but none of it is overly aggressive or anything that causes any sort of discomfort, I guess, except one aspect, which we'll talk about a little later when we touch on carryability. So the pocket clip. I mentioned this in my Steel Will Intrigue video. Just not a fan of that style. Just aesthetically for me, I just don't personally like it. It's not a deep ride, obviously. They got the clip up as high as they could with this style anyway. So you're going to have a good 1/2 inch or so sticking out of the pocket. So if that's an issue for you, just something to take note of. It is reversible to the opposite side. I actually changed the clip orientation. JD is a lefty, and so I swapped it to the what I'll call the proper side, for me anyway, so I could carry this. And JD, don't worry, I'll swap it back for you before I return it to you. So right or left-handed, tip up only, and being a flipper, again, a perfect knife for a left-handed user, so that's all good. As far as ergos are concerned, it's very comfortable. If you look at the silhouette, you know, there's some dynamics to it. And so kind of just in a light EDC type grip where you're just doing basic EDC tasks, right? Opening boxes, cutting up an apple, cutting paracord, strings off t-shirts, all the stuff that I use this knife for in my testing. It's perfectly comfortable, kind of melts in your hand. When it comes to kind of your more hard use grip, and I kind of like to qualify the two, right? Most of us, when we open our knife to cut something, we're kind of in a light to medium grip just to do something very simple. If I'm out in the backyard, and I did this with this exact knife, and I'm going to be breaking down a giant cardboard box, I put it in a hammer grip, and I, you know, squeeze as hard as I need to, and I work through that cardboard. In the hammer grip, I can squeeze as hard as I possibly can, and I'm not actually getting a hot spot from that pocket clip, which is nice. So kind of in that a little more hard use hammer grip, if you're really trying to push through some material, I did not find it uncomfortable whatsoever, so that was nice. It carries well as far as kind of how it fits in the pocket. The only concern I have with this, and I mentioned this on another review that I haven't posted yet, this backspacer, just the way it's designed with this texturing on it, and the way I carry it being a right-handed person in my right pocket, it sits in the pocket like this, right? So every time I would reach into my pocket to get something else, kind of the side of my right hand here would just kind of rub along that texturing. And it's not crazy uncomfortable, don't get me wrong. It's not gonna cut you open or, you know, leave crazy red marks. It's just a little uncomfortable. I can get past it for sure. And they do the same thing on the cut jack. On the cut jack, it's gonna be a polymer backspacer, so it's not quite as aggressive as the aluminum, but just something to point out. You know, if you have, I guess, really, really sensitive skin or something, it might be an issue, but just something to point out. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but it's not uncomfortable enough to be an issue. So I would definitely recommend this knife. I enjoyed carrying it, testing it, using it, and I do plan on purchasing one for myself. So those are my overall thoughts on the steel wheel cut jack. It's not the cut jack. I apologize. It is the Modus model F25, this one being the F25-13 with the blue scale and the orange backspacer. Thank you again, JD, for letting me and trusting me with your knives to test and review. I do appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.